The cake sat untouched in the center of the table. 40 candles flickered like the eyes of a prosecutor in a courtroom. The guests around me shifted in their seats. Their tight smiles were sliding off their faces like makeup under hot stage lights. They were watching a performance that was just about to begin. In my imagination, he had already said it out loud. "Let me introduce Elowen. We've been living together for 7 years, and these are our children, Zuri and Kenji." Those words hadn't been spoken yet. They rang only in my head, but so loudly it felt as if the garden had frozen from their echo. But in reality, the silence was sliced by a completely different voice. Smooth, unfamiliar, dripping with that fake politeness I recognized from the first syllable. "Dear guests, this is my colleague from Atlanta, Elowen Banks, and her children." Someone in the crowd gasped softly. Even those who knew nothing felt it. There was no truth in those words. My husband, the man I had lived with for 14 years, stood before me, his hand resting on the waist of a woman whose existence I hadn't even suspected until recently. 2 children huddled at her legs. They looked at me with wide, dark eyes, as if staring at an alien, incomprehensible world. A silence hung over the garden, the kind that hangs in the humid air before a thunderstorm, when everything freezes in anticipation of the strike. I scanned the faces of friends, colleagues, neighbors. Everyone was witnessing my humiliation. Some knew, I could tell by their lowered eyes. Others looked just as shocked as I did. But what Cassius didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had uncovered his betrayal 6 months ago, and tonight wasn't just a celebration of my birthday. This was Judgment Day. Our eyes met. I smiled, not pitifully, not brokenly, but calmly, almost solemnly. It was the smile of a person who knows she holds all the aces. "How sweet that you've finally introduced us," I said, reaching for the silver knife next to the cake. "Now, allow me to introduce you to a few things, too." I had everything. At least, that's what people around us said. From the outside, my life sparkled like expensive champagne. A successful career as a corporate attorney at a top Chicago firm. A stunning brownstone in Hyde Park. A handsome husband who frequently traveled for his prestigious job at Vertex Global. After years of trying to conceive, we had finally made peace with being childless and learned to enjoy our freedom. We traveled the world, maintained a wide circle of influential friends, and never counted pennies. "You're so blessed, Vesper," my sister Serafina had said during our Saturday brunch. "Cassius is a dream. Remember how all my girlfriends were jealous when you two jumped the broom?" I nodded mechanically, picking at my salad. I had long started noticing that something was off. Cassius's business trips had become more frequent, sometimes extending without warning. At home, he was distracted, constantly checking his phone, stepping into other rooms to take calls. "Vesper, hello?" Serafina waved a manicured hand in front of my face. "Where'd you go?" "Just work stress," I lied smoothly. "We have a huge merger closing." But it wasn't work. It was the growing hollowness in my chest every time Cassius kissed me goodbye, the way his eyes no longer met mine when he said, "I love you." Small things stacking up into a picture I wasn't ready to see. After brunch, I took the long way home along Lakeshore Drive. The houses stood proud and flawless, hiding other people's secrets behind beautiful facades, just like my marriage. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed Cassius's Range Rover. Strange, he said he had meetings downtown all day. I entered quietly, hearing his voice drifting from his home office. "I miss you too, baby," he was saying. "Yeah, I know. I'll figure something out, I promise. Kiss the kids for me." I froze by the door. The blood in my veins turned to ice water. Kids? What kids? In that second, my life split into before and after. "I love you, Elowen. More than anything." The words hung in the air like drops of venom on the tip of a dagger, ready to fall and kill. I backed away silently, returned to my car. With trembling hands, I started the engine and drove. Just drove. Nowhere specific, just away. The rain started to fall, keeping time with the tears streaming down my cheeks. They say ignorance is bliss, but once you lift the veil, there is no going back. For the next week, I played the role of the perfect wife while moonlighting as a detective in my own marriage. Cassius left for another business trip, untying my hands to search. I started with his office, nothing in the obvious places. He was too careful. But in the back corner of a filing cabinet, behind tax returns from 5 years ago, I found a folder labeled Real Estate, Atlanta. We didn't own property in Atlanta. Inside were deeds to a house in Buckhead, bought 6 years ago, in the names of Cassius and a certain Elowin Banks. There were mortgage statements, utility bills, and tuition receipts from a private academy for Azuri and Kenji Banks Harrison. My husband had another family, another life, another wife. I sat on the floor of our master bedroom, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, and felt a strange calm. The tears dried up, replaced by something colder and more focused. That evening, I called my best friend, Iman. "I need a good PI," I said without preamble. "Vesper, what happened?" "Everything," I replied, "and I'm going to need your help." 3 days later, I was sitting in a booth at a quiet diner on the South Side, across from Mr. Gentry, a former detective turned private investigator. He was an older brother with gray in his beard and eyes that had seen it all. "Ms. Harrison, are you sure you want to know everything?" he asked after hearing my story. "Sometimes the truth cuts deeper than the lie." I looked him straight in the eye. "The truth is already worse than anything I can imagine. Now I need proof." Over the next month, Mr. Gentry sent me regular reports, photos of Cassius with Elowin, photos of Cassius with his second family at a barbecue in Atlanta, a copy of their marriage certificate, filed 7 years after ours, a marriage that was legally void, financial documents, traces of fraud, transfers to shell accounts, fake investment schemes where he had pulled in dozens of people from our community. But the most damning piece was a life insurance policy for $3 million, where the sole beneficiary was listed as Elowin Banks. "He's been building this double life for years," Mr. Gentry explained at our final meeting. "From what I can tell, neither family knows about the other. He told the Atlanta family he works in international sales. That explains his absences." "But how is that even possible in this day and age?" I asked. "How could he marry a second time?" "States don't always share databases perfectly," Mr. Gentry explained. "If marriages happen in different states and he used forged divorce papers, unfortunately the system has cracks. Plus, looking at these docs, he called in some favors, greased some palms." I nodded, taking the thick folder of evidence. "Thank you. This is exactly what I needed." As I was leaving, Mr. Gentry called out, "Ms. Harrison, whatever you're planning, be careful." I turned back with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Oh, I stopped being careful a long time ago." Most people rush into revenge. They act on heat, make mistakes, leave themselves exposed. I wasn't going to repeat their errors. For 2 more months, I played the oblivious wife flawlessly. I greeted Cassius with kisses when he returned from trips, listened intently to his lies about conference calls and client dinners, and in parallel, I systematically dismantled our joint life brick by brick. First, the finances. As a lawyer, I knew exactly how to protect myself. I documented everything, copied records, systematically moved funds into accounts he couldn't touch. I consulted with Sterling Vance, the sharpest divorce attorney at my firm, showing him the evidence of the second family, the bigamy, and the fraud. "This is extraordinary," Sterling said, adjusting his glasses as he studied the documents. "In all my years of practice, I've rarely seen a case this clear-cut. Beyond the fraud, there's forgery of divorce papers used for the second marriage. That's a felony on its own." "I don't just want a divorce," I explained. "I want him to lose everything." Sterling looked at me carefully. "Vesper, I understand your pain, but revenge rarely brings the satisfaction people hope for." "This isn't about satisfaction," I replied. "It's about justice." The next step was building a squad. I chose carefully who to tell. My sister Serafina, my friend Iman, and my colleague Nix, women I trusted with my life. I can't believe he did this, Serafina fumed, looking at the photos. My own brother-in-law, living 2 lives for years. What's the play? Iman asked, leaning forward. I laid out my plan, watching their expressions shift from shock to involuntary admiration. That's bold, Nick said finally, and risky. Think it'll work? I asked. They exchanged glances before Serafina spoke. If anyone can pull this off, it's you. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when Cassius mentioned my upcoming 40th birthday. We should throw a party, he suggested one evening. Something special. The Big 4-0. I looked up from my book, my heart hammered despite my calm exterior. That sounds wonderful. Why don't you organize it? Invite all our friends. Make it a surprise. He looked pleased with my enthusiasm, missing the cold calculation behind my smile. Any special requests? Just one, I answered. I want it to be memorable. Something no one will ever forget. I needed to see the enemy face to face. 3 weeks before the birthday, I took a personal day and flew to Atlanta. I knew Elowen's schedule by heart thanks to Mr. Gentry. On Friday afternoons, she volunteered at the library of Booker T. Washington Academy. I found her exactly where I expected, shelving books in the quiet corner. She was pretty but unassuming. Natural hair pulled back in a puff, simple clothes, minimal makeup. She was younger than me by maybe 8 years. I approached her directly. Excuse me, are you Elowen? She looked up with a warm smile. Yes, can I help you find something? Actually, I'm writing a piece for Essence about Black families where both parents are career-driven. I lied smoothly. One of the teachers mentioned you might be willing to talk about how you balance family life with your husband's constant travel. Her face lit up. Oh, sure, I'd love to help, though I'm not sure my life is that interesting. We sat at a small table. I casually placed my phone down, voice memo running. Tell me about your family, I asked. Well, there's me, my husband Cassius, and our 2 kids, Zuri and Kenji, she began, showing me photos on her phone. Cassius works in international sales, so he's on the road a lot. It's hard on the kids, but we make it work. How did you meet? I asked, keeping my professional smile plastered on while my stomach churned. At a conference in Charlotte 7 years ago, she said, blushing slightly. It was so romantic. He was giving a keynote, and there was just this spark. He was going through a divorce at the time. I nodded encouragingly, fighting to keep my expression neutral. Divorcing, of course. What else would he tell her? We got married pretty quickly. Some folks said too quickly, she continued. But when you know, right? Absolutely, I agreed. And he travels a lot? About 2 weeks a month, she sighed. It's tough, but he's building something important for our future. He says he'll cut back soon, spend more time at home. As she spoke, I studied her. There was no guile in her eyes, no hint that she was part of a monstrous deception. She was a victim, too. She loved the same lying man I had once loved. 30 minutes later, I wrapped up the interview. It was nice chatting, she said. I usually only talk to kids all day. Adult conversation is a rarity. As I walked away, she called out, I didn't catch the title of the article? Deception and betrayal, I answered without turning around. That night, I sat in my hotel room in downtown Atlanta, listening to the recording. The tears finally broke through the dam I had built. Not for Cassius, I had mourned him long ago, but for Elowen and her children, whose world I was about to incinerate. For a moment, I thought, maybe I should drop it. Walk away, start over, let them live in blissful ignorance. But then I remembered the insurance policy with her name on it, the years of lies, my stolen future. No, they deserved the truth just as much as I did, and Cassius deserved everything that was coming to him. My birthday fell on a Saturday, perfect for what I had planned. Cassius threw himself into the role of party planner with surprising enthusiasm, confirming my suspicions. He saw this as an opportunity. About 50 guests were set to gather in our spacious garden, partners from the firm, neighbors, old friends from Howard University, family. I invited a few business associates, too. He mentioned casually over dinner a week before. Thought you might want to network. I smiled. How thoughtful. Anyone I know? No, they're from our Atlanta office. But you'll like them, I'm sure. The Atlanta office. Of course. I nodded gratefully, hiding my racing heart behind a glass of wine. He had finally decided to merge his worlds, but it wasn't going to go the way he planned. The day before the party, I met with my 3 allies for a final run-through. Everything is set on my end, Nix confirmed, tapping a briefcase of official-looking documents. Even though these are copies, they look convincing enough for the show. Iman handed me a flash drive. Presentation is locked and loaded. I tested it on the outdoor projector while Cassius was at the gym. And I spoke to the special guests, Serafina added. They'll arrive exactly on time. I took a deep breath, looking at these women who had been my lifeline. Thank you. I couldn't do this without y'all. You nervous? Iman asked softly. No, I realized with surprise. I just want it to be over. In reality, the days leading up to the party were excruciating. I barely slept, terrified Cassius would sense something or cancel at the last minute. Everything felt calibrated to the millimeter, which made it all the more fragile. One wrong move, and it all collapses. That night, Cassius and I slept in the same bed for the last time. He hugged me, mumbling something about making my day special. I lay awake, listening to his steady breathing, remembering times when that sound soothed me instead of reminding me of treason. 14 years of marriage, years I couldn't get back. The morning brought perfect Chicago summer weather. Clear skies, warm breeze off the lake. It was as if nature itself approved of the reckoning. Happy birthday, Queen, my husband said, bringing breakfast in bed. Today is going to be amazing. Oh, it certainly will be, I agreed, accepting his kiss with a practiced smile. By 6:00 p.m., our garden had transformed. String lights draped from the oak trees, illuminating elegant tables covered in white linen. A projection screen stood on a small stage. Guests assumed it was for a sentimental slideshow of my 40 years. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Soft R&B played in the background. I chose my outfit carefully, a crimson dress that hugged every curve. It radiated power and confidence, not a plea for pity. My hair was swept up, diamond earrings, Cassius's gift for our 10th anniversary, catching the light with every move. Guests arrived steadily, offering congratulations, marveling at the setup. Cassius played the loving husband perfectly. His hand rested possessively on my waist as we greeted everyone. You outdid yourself, I said, genuinely impressed by the elegance of the execution. He beamed with pride. Only the best for my wife. At 7:30, I noticed Cassius glancing at his watch. His eyes kept darting to the side gate. I knew exactly who he was waiting for. Someone running late? I asked innocently. Just a couple of colleagues, he answered, pecking me on the cheek. As if on cue, Serafina appeared at my elbow. Vesper, slight issue with the caterer. Need your eyes on it. I excused myself, squeezing Cassius's hand. Back in a minute, baby. Behind the catering tent, Serafina and Nix were waiting. They're here, Serafina whispered. Just pulled up. Is everyone in position? I asked. Nix nodded. Sterling and the legal team are ready. Mr. Gentry is watching the exits. Police have been notified of a potential disturbance, but they're standing by. Let's do this, I said, squaring my shoulders. We returned to the party separately, blending into the crowd. I took a position where I could watch Cassius greet his colleagues while remaining unseen. And there they were. Elowen, looking nervous but lovely in a blue dress, holding the hands of 2 dressed-up children. My heart clenched painfully at the sight of them. Zuri had Cassius's eyes. Kenji had his smile. Cassius hugged them warmly, too caught up in his own performance to notice the space around them, silently shifting. My allies were maneuvering people into place. I approached slowly, champagne glass in hand. Iman and Nix stayed back, but within reach. Cassius, I called out. My voice cut clearly through the suddenly quiet crowd. Aren't you going to introduce me to your guests? He turned, his face composed, but his eyes wary. Vesper, this is my colleague from Atlanta, Elowen Banks, and her children. Colleague? I repeated, extending a hand to Elowen. How interesting. I'm Vesper Harrison, Cassius's wife, of 14 years. Confusion rippled across her face. Wife? But Cassius has been divorced for years. Her voice trailed off as she looked back at him. Is that what he told you? I asked softly. Just like he told me he's my only husband and works in consulting. The blood drained from Cassius's face as he realized what was happening. Vesper, this isn't the time or place. For the truth, I finished for him. I disagree. I think my birthday is the perfect time for the truth. Don't you all agree? By now, all conversation had died. Every guest was watching the drama unfold. What is going on, Cassius? Elowen demanded, pulling her children closer. Cassius looked around desperately, seeing no escape route. I can explain everything. Please, I gestured to the silent crowd. We are all very interested to hear your explanation. It's a misunderstanding, Cassius said, his charming smile now looking tight and desperate. Vesper and I have been separated for a long time. The divorce just isn't finalized on paper. Financial reasons. I laughed. The sound was brittle in the tense air. Is that your version? Curious, because I have our joint tax returns from last year right here. I nodded to Nix, who handed me a folder. And this, I continued, is the deed to a house in Buckhead you bought 6 years ago with Elowen Banks. I dropped the papers onto a nearby cocktail table. A house he bought while married to me, while living here, in our home. Elowen stepped forward, her face pale. He told me the divorce was finalized 7 years ago. There was no divorce, I told her. Not even a filing. Cassius and I have shared this house, this bed, this life continuously for 14 years. A murmur ran through the crowd. Cassius's face turned to stone. He realized there was no easy way out. Elowen, take the kids and wait in the car, he ordered. This is some sick joke. The only joke here is how long you thought you could keep this charade going, I said. I turned to Elowen. I only found out about you 6 months ago, about your marriage, about the children. It was all a lie. Elowen stared at Cassius, tears shining in her eyes. Is it true? Are you still married to her? Technically, yes, but technically? She repeated in disbelief. We have a marriage certificate. We have children. Which makes your marriage void, I emphasized. But the fraud and forgery he used to cover this life, that's a felony. The children started to get restless. The girl clung to her mother's dress, while the boy looked at Cassius with confusion. Daddy, I want to go with you. That single word, Daddy, rolled through the gathering like a shockwave. A few of our oldest friends shook their heads in disbelief. I think it's time for the presentation, I announced, nodding to Aman at the projector. The screen came alive with a meticulously edited montage. Photos of Cassius and me over 14 years of marriage, interspersed with dated photos of Cassius with his second family. Financial documents, wire transfers, the fake marriage certificate, the insurance policy. As it turns out, for 7 years, I narrated as the images cycled. Cassius led 2 full lives, 2 wives, 2 homes, and he funded this deception with money partly earned through my family's connections and partly through a Ponzi scheme. At those words, Cassius's head snapped up. That's a lie. Is it? Sterling, would you care to explain what we found? My lawyer stepped forward, professional and imposing in his bespoke suit. Upon investigating Mr. Harrison's finances, we discovered he has been running an investment scheme, using clients from both his legitimate business and fabricated ones. He promised returns from companies that do not exist. That was our ace in the hole. During the investigation into his double life, we stumbled upon actual financial crimes. What started as a search for infidelity turned into something far more destructive. Several defrauded investors are here tonight, Sterling continued, gesturing to 3 stunned men in the back of the garden. Clients Cassius had personally invited, unaware I had already contacted them with proof of the fraud. Cassius lunged toward me, his face twisted in rage. You planned this whole thing! 2 security guards hired by Mr. Gentry materialized instantly, restraining him before he could reach me. "Yes, Cassius," I said calmly, though my heart was slamming against my ribs. "I planned it exactly like you planned to juggle 2 families while robbing investors blind." The next hour unfolded like a perfectly rehearsed dance of destruction. While Cassius was held back, Nix handed evidence packets to key people, the victims of the fraud, Elowin, who had stayed, paralyzed by shock, and 2 plainclothes officers who had been standing quietly near the exit. Elowin sank into a garden chair, her children pressed against her as she tried to comprehend the unthinkable truth of her life. I walked over to her gently, knowing the pain I was inflicting, despite her being a victim like me. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way," I said quietly, "but you deserve to know." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Did you know about us when I married him?" "No," I assured her. "I only found out 6 months ago. He told me he was traveling for work." Meanwhile, Cassius had switched from rage to desperate negotiation, trying to convince the guards and then the police that this was all a massive misunderstanding. "You can't arrest me," he insisted, as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. "This is a civil matter, a family dispute." One of the officers pulled a stamped document from a folder. "We have a warrant, Mr. Harrison. Wire fraud, forgery. We were just waiting for you to be in a jurisdiction where you couldn't run. Forging divorce papers and grand larceny aren't family disputes," the other officer said calmly. "They're felonies." Most of the guests had the tact to quietly leave, though some lingered on the periphery, unable to look away from the spectacular crash of what seemed like a perfect life. Serafina approached with a glass of water for Elowin. "There's a room prepared inside where you and the kids can be alone," she offered. "My sister thought you might need a place to process." Elowin looked at me in surprise. "You prepared a room for us?" "I knew this would be traumatic," I explained, "especially for the babies. I didn't want them witnessing everything." As Serafina led them inside, Sterling pulled me aside. "The police will need statements from both you and Ms. Banks. Legally speaking, Cassius is done." I nodded, watching them lead Cassius to the waiting squad car. His face was ashen gray. Our eyes met as they put him in the back seat. I expected to see hate, or maybe pleading. Instead, I saw something else. A flicker of respect, maybe even admiration, for how thoroughly I had orchestrated his downfall. He gave me a small, ironic nod before ducking into the car. The party, my 40th birthday celebration, was effectively over. Catering staff were quietly packing up food and equipment. The lights that had seemed so festive now cast eerie shadows on the empty tables. Iman found me sitting alone at the head table. An untouched glass of champagne sat before me. "You did it," she said simply, sitting down. "I did," I agreed, still looking at where the police car had been. "So why don't I feel better?" She covered my hand with hers. "Because revenge doesn't heal the wound, Vesper. It just stops the bleeding." We sat in silence for a while before I finally raised the glass. To 40 and to new beginnings. The days following my birthday blurred into a haze of police statements, legal meetings, and press inquiries. My husband's double life became a local sensation. His fraud scheme turned out to be bigger than even I suspected. Losses totaled nearly $2 million across 20 victims. I avoided the media circus, holing up in a small rental apartment I had prepped months earlier. My sister stayed with me those first hard nights when sleep wouldn't come and doubts crept in during the dark hours. "Did I do the right thing?" I asked her one night over a bottle of Pinot. "Those kids will grow up with a father in prison." "Those kids would have grown up with a liar and a thief for a father either way," she pointed out. "At least now Elowin can build an honest life for them." Speaking of Elowin, she surprised me by reaching out a week after the party. We met at a quiet coffee shop in Bucktown, both nervous and unsure. "I needed to see you," she explained once we settled with our coffees, "to make it real." "What do you want to know?" I asked. "When did you suspect? What gave him away?" I told her about the phone call I overheard, the investigation, finding her and the kids. I interviewed you, I admitted. At the school library. Her eyes widened. The article for Essence. I knew you looked familiar, but you had braids then. She laughed suddenly, a short, pained sound. God, what fools we were. Not fools, I corrected. Victims. There's a difference. We talked for hours, comparing notes on the man we both loved. Identical gifts for birthdays, identical romantic lines, even some mutual acquaintances who must have known about both families but stayed silent. I keep asking myself how I didn't see it, Elowen confessed. There were signs, calls he wouldn't take in front of me. Weekends he was unreachable. I trusted him. Me too, I said quietly. For 14 years. Before we parted, she took my hand. Thank you. Not for how you did it, but for giving me the truth. Meanwhile, Cassius's legal troubles were snowballing. Bail was denied due to flight risk, so he awaited trial in Cook County Jail. His lawyer, a shark in a shiny suit, kept contacting me about a potential deal. What kind of deal? I asked, not hiding my skepticism. Sterling adjusted his cufflink. A plea bargain. He pleads guilty, hands over all documents, reveals the scheme, and gives up accomplices. In exchange, he asks for leniency. If he's lucky, 6 or 7 years instead of 15. And why do you need my consent? I felt a dry lump in my throat. You're a victim. Your statement, your refusal or support of the deal matters to the judge. Plus, you can make conditions, restitution, forfeiture of assets. And if I agree? My voice was quieter than I intended. Then we include your demands in the agreement. If he meets them before sentencing, it counts in his favor. He paused. Honestly, Vesper, he's more afraid for his reputation than the time. Fraud sounds better than bigamy in certain circles. He wants to save face. I thought about it all night before making a decision. In the morning, I called Sterling. Tell his lawyer I agree on one condition, I said. If Cassius signs over full legal custody to Elowen and terminates his parental rights. Sterling sounded surprised. Are you sure? That's letting him off easy financially. It's not about him, I answered. It's about those children. They deserve a chance at a normal life without his toxicity dragging them down. 2 days later, Elowen called. Her voice trembled with emotion. He signed the papers. Something inside me hardened at this final proof of Cassius's character. Even his own children were just chess pieces to him. What will you tell them when they're older? I asked her. After a long pause, she answered, the truth age-appropriate, that their father made bad choices that hurt people, including them, that he is paying for those choices, and that none of it is their fault. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without dreaming of Cassius. My 41st birthday was quiet, exactly how I wanted it. No party, no performance, just dinner with my closest friends in my new condo in the South Loop. The past year had changed me in ways I was still discovering. After the divorce, surprisingly simple given the circumstances, I left the corporate firm to work for a nonprofit, helping women rebuild their lives after financial and domestic trauma. The pay cut meant moving from a palace to a modern apartment overlooking the city lights, a compromise that felt like freedom, not loss. To new chapters, Iman toasted, raising her glass. To real friends, I added, looking around at the small circle who had held me up. After everyone left, I sat alone on the balcony, watching the Chicago skyline. My phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. Happy birthday, Vesper. I underestimated you. My mistake. C. Somehow, he had found a way to contact me from prison. I wasn't surprised. Cassius was always resourceful. I deleted the message without replying and blocked the number. He no longer had power over my thoughts or feelings. The sentencing hearing happened without me. 10 years for wire fraud and money laundering. I didn't attend, saying goodbye to that chapter of my life. The next morning, I met Elowen for our now regular monthly coffee via Zoom. She had moved back to Charlotte with the kids, to be near her parents, working as a teacher and slowly healing. Zuri asked about her dad yesterday, she shared, stirring her tea. Wanted to know if bad people can become good again. What did you tell her? That every day people make choices, and that I believe people can change if they truly want to. She smiled sadly. I don't know if Cassius will ever change, but I want her to believe in redemption. I nodded, appreciating her wisdom. How are you doing? Some days are harder than others, she admitted. But we're making it. The kids are resilient. And I'm actually seeing someone. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely happy for her. Do you have anyone special? I shook my head. Not yet. Right now, I'm focused on me, learning who I am without Cassius defining me. We ended the call with a warmth that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Two women bound by betrayal, but refusing to be defined by it. That evening, a large envelope arrived via courier. Inside was a legal document. Cassius had signed over his remaining share of a hidden investment portfolio worth nearly $500,000. Attached was a note. For what it's worth, I am sorry, not just that I got caught, but for what I did. You deserved better, V. I stood in my kitchen, looking at his familiar handwriting. Was it genuine remorse or another manipulation? Did it even matter? After careful thought, I transferred the entire amount into an education trust for Zuri and Kenji. Cassius had stolen their father from them. The least I could do was help secure their future. Watching the sunset from my balcony that night, I realized something important. The woman who organized that elaborate revenge at the birthday party wasn't who I was becoming. That Vesper fed on pain and betrayal, however justified her actions were. This Vesper, the one sipping tea and watching the stars come out over Lake Michigan, was finding a path to something else. Not quite forgiveness, but perhaps understanding. And definitely strength. I had lost a husband, but I found myself in the process. And that, I realized, was the deepest revenge of all. Years later, the story of my birthday became something of a legend in our circle. Not the dramatic details of the takedown, but how I turned my pain into purpose. My work at the nonprofit expanded. I started designing programs specifically for women recovering from massive personal betrayals, financial, emotional, marital. Every case was unique, but the core remained the same, taking back control of your own story. Elowen and I stayed in touch, though not constantly. We texted on birthdays, shared rare life updates. At first, our communication was cautious. We were both walking on thin ice. It helped that both of us went through therapy. There, step by step, we learned to separate Cassius's guilt from our own feelings and stop fighting each other. Her children thrived. Zuri became a talented musician. Kenji showed promise in mathematics. They knew the basic truth about their father without being consumed by his mistakes. Cassius served 8 years out of 10 before being released on parole. I heard through the grapevine that he was working as a bookkeeper for a small shop. His former professional world was closed to him forever. The fall was spectacular, but it was no longer about him. It was about me, about Elowen, about moving forward. 5 years after that fateful birthday, I met Otis, a widower who understood complexity, who had his own history of loss and rebirth. Our relationship was built on transparency, mutual respect, and a shared understanding that life rarely follows the script we imagine. During our first serious conversation, I told him everything about Cassius, the revenge, my journey. That must have been incredibly heavy to carry, Otis said simply, holding my hand. Yes, I agreed. But I'm not that woman anymore. I'm the one who survived, the one who grew. At our wedding 2 years later, Elowen was there, a guest, a friend who understood the complex fabric of survival. Zuri, who played the violin beautifully, performed a piece of her own composition during the ceremony. Life, I learned, isn't about perfect revenge, it's about perfect resilience. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.